sound actually has its roots in Africa. Slaves brought to America wanted something that sounded like the instruments from home, so they devised the banjo, and the rest is music history. To make a banjo, a lip is carved into wood that's been steamed and bent into a circular rim. The rim is carefully measured. It must be a perfect fit for this metal tone ring. The wooden back of the banjo acts as a sound resonator, and some plastic trim gives it a more stylish look. A chemical accelerator helps the glue dry so the plastic trim adheres almost instantly. The surface is then sanded until the plastic is flush to the wood. This long piece of wood will become the banjo's neck. Using a table saw, an artisan cuts a long slot into the neck so that a metal adjusting rod can be installed later. He widens the end of the neck with two pieces of wood to form the instrument's peg head. Next comes some very delicate work, as tiny mother-of-pearl decorations are embedded in a piece of ebony. That inlaid piece of ebony is then glued onto the banjo's peg head and clamped to dry. Now, it's over to a saw with 22 blades. A long piece of ebony is passed over those blades to make the banjo's fret slots. This is the banjo's fingerboard. Once it's been adorned with more inlaid decorations, the fingerboard is glued onto the banjo neck. Next, the edges of the banjo neck and peg head are trimmed down to size. Using this router, artisans give the back and sides of the banjo neck smoother contours. The rounded edges will make the instrument easier to hold and play. They finalize the shape of the neck with a rasp, then give it a thorough sanding. Here, metal frets are tapped into the slots on the fingerboard, and the overlap is trimmed. Now it's time for a little color. Stain is rubbed onto the banjo parts. When the stain dries, it's followed by 12 coats of lacquer. And finally, a thorough buffing. Now, all the pieces come together, beginning with the pre-fitted tone ring and wooden rim. The plastic head through which the banjo's sound will radiate fits on the tone ring. The head is secured with a tension hoop and a series of hooks. Tightening these hooks will stretch the plastic head to adjust the instrument's tone. The banjo neck and its peg head are attached and secured with metal rods. The tuning pegs are screwed into the peg head. Then the banjo's strings are attached and tightened. This little wooden bridge sits on the plastic head and is only held in place by the tension of the strings. Finally, the back of the banjo goes into place. And now, this finely crafted instrument is ready to strum away. The barbecue's origins are clouded in a bit of a smoky haze, but it's believed that native Caribbeans were the first to cook this way. Of course, back then, they didn't have charcoal grills. They roasted their meat over a smoky pit. Today, people still love a good cookout, but now we have better equipment. Basic charcoal grills begin with big steel discs. Rollers coat each one with soapy lubricant. Then they're fed into a press that shapes each one into a big bowl. Molding steel can be tricky. If it's not lubricated enough, it could tear instead of bend. So workers need to make sure each disc gets a generous application of the soapy solution before it goes into the press. This is a back view of the press. With each powerful thrust, the ram delivers 500 tons of pressure. A similar type of press makes the barbecue's lids. An operator inspects each part for splits and cracks. Then, it's over to a press that trims the rim. The scrap is tossed into a bin for recycling. Next, the barbecue bowl spins around while an automated roller flanges the rim. After that, holes are punched into the bowl for ventilation. Now it's time to bring in the welding guns. The guns fuse metal couplings to the bowls to serve as attachments for the barbecue's legs. Here, handles are loaded into an assembly machine. Below, a turntable swings the barbecue bowls into position, then the handles are welded to each side. At another station, the barbecue lids get a handle of their own. No chef can check the progress of a burger without this essential part. This one will allow the chef to lower the lid to control the cooking temperature and then lift it again when it's time to flip the burgers. The barbecue parts now travel on an overhead rail to the wash station. They're hosed down with soapy water, then rinsed clean. Once they're dry, it's off to the finishing department. Here, the parts are dusted with a glass powder. Then it's into a red-hot furnace set to 1,500 degrees. The furnace bakes the glass dust into an enamel finish that protects the barbecue from rust and stains, so they'll last for years. Next, they go under intense lights that expose any defects in what should be a mirror-like finish. An inspector examines each part inside and out. A punch machine now makes dampers from aluminum. It simultaneously cuts the shapes and embosses the company's logo onto them. This handy attachment enables the chef to control the flow of air to the grill. Nylon grips go onto the handle. And the damper is installed over the lid's ventilation holes. It's up to the consumer to complete the final assembly. And in just a few minutes, the burgers could be grilling.
When they make baseballs for the pros, they aren't just playing around. They build these balls precisely to league standards. And incredibly, those standards date back to 1872. Each ball is uniform in circumference and weight, so the game is an equal contest. Crowds will go wild for these professional baseballs, and at the heart of each one is something called the pill. The pill is smaller than a golf ball. It's about 4 1/4 inches in circumference. Inside the pill's rubber casing is a sphere of cork. They pour latex adhesive over hundreds of pills loaded into a drum. Rollers spin the drum to evenly coat the pills with the adhesive. This adhesive never dries out completely, and the pills remain sticky to the touch. Next, they loop 4-ply wool around the pill. This machine spins the pill to wind the yarn around it. This winding substantially fattens the pill. It's the first time a camera has ever been allowed to record this proprietary machine, so we can't show you all of it. They wind a second layer of wool around the pills. This yarn is 3-ply, and it thickens the ball a little more. For a third winding, they use another 3-ply yarn, but it's a bit lighter. The various layers of yarn are what give the baseball resilience, so it springs back into shape despite being hit repeatedly. For the final winding, they use a much thinner polywool blend because its surface is smoother. This wound pill is called the center. They weigh it and measure its circumference, which should be about 9 inches. They add adhesive to a spinning drum, then load the centers into it. As the centers tumble, they absorb the glue and the wound fibers adhere to each other. The centers air dry for 48 hours but remain sticky. Using this hydraulic press, they punch out figure-8 shapes from leather, complete with holes around the periphery, allowing them to be stitched into baseball covers. But first, they stamp the date and lot number onto them. Then they wrap them in wet towels. The moisture will make the leather pliable enough to sew. They roll the water-based adhesive onto one side of the cutouts, which sticks to the moist leather. They press 2 cutouts to the center sticky surface. It's an exact fit. They clamp the leather-clad ball in a vise, and it's time to sew. Working with 2 needles, the sewer pulls thread through the ball's center and up through the holes in the leather pieces to cross-stitch them together. He rubs wax on the thread to stiffen it, because if it slackens, it's more likely to tangle. When it comes to cross-stitching, these workers are in a league of their own. They make quick work of the 108 stitches in each ball. There are 350 sewers in this factory, and they produce 8,000 to 10,000 balls per day. That's a lot of home runs. The final stitch goes through the center of the baseball and out the other side. The sewer then pulls stitches into a V configuration to give the ball a consistent look and feel. The balls now roll into a press that smooths down the seams. Smoother balls are harder to grip, and they make pitching a bit tougher for the pros. Finally, a 3-headed stamper gives it the trademark, league logo, and the commissioner's signature. With drying cycles, it takes a week to make a professional baseball. It will be whacked and slammed out of the playing field. But that's life in the big leagues.